33 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt with David Allen White, Christopher Hitchens. Professor White, as I went to break, and I said it quite seriously, I wanted to ask you, since it's the Feast of St. Dominic we're taping this on, his mission was to the heretics in many sense. Are you concerned with the soul of Christopher Hitchens and what happens to him if he stays in the state of atheism that he's in?
Well, let me put it this way. As a believing Catholic, I'm concerned for all souls, but I have no business making any pronouncements whatsoever upon what happens to any individual soul at the time of death.
What does the Church teach about a soul that is not convicted?
Is very interesting. In fact, in the book, there is a fascinating passage. I assume you know the one I refer to, Mr. Hitchens, about Mary McCarthy?
Yes.
Who was shocked at learning from a Jesuit preacher that her Protestant grandfather was doomed to eternal punishment because he had been baptized the wrong way. Now, I'm not a fan of the art of Mary McCarthy, but she was a bright woman, and she was deeply troubled. Now, I do object to a phrase you use. The Mother Superior consulted higher authorities, and you say there was a loophole in the writings of Bishop Athanasius, who held that heretics were only damned if they rejected the true church with full awareness of what they were doing. That is a Catholic doctrine simply called invincible ignorance. The Church has always said, we do not know how God will judge any individual human soul. It is not my place to say anything. It's my place to have a conversation with Mr. Hitchens to try to convince him. Obviously, there is a great gulf fix between what the two of us believe, but we have certain things in common. We can have a serious discussion about things we have in common, and maybe I can hope to move him one way or another. Believing in prayer, I can pray for him. It is, I think, terribly unfair to make any assumption about what will happen to any soul. As a Catholic, I can't do that. One other quick comment.
But wait, that undermines a lot of the Hitchens argument about the Church, that the Church is judgmental and condemning.
If it were true, but I mean, what Professor White has to do before he goes any further is to say that he repudiates the decades, generations, in which children were told in blood-curdling tones by elderly virgins that they would go to hell if they played with themselves, even though they were Catholic, and that those who weren't Catholic would go to hell no matter what if they had turned away from the church, if they were the wrong kind of Christian, or if they were Jewish or Muslim. And the whole argument of invincible ignorance is invented to deal with an insuperable problem, which is this: why did the revelation of Jesus of Nazareth only begin and occur in a small, remote, inaccessible, illiterate part of Palestine? Why are there millions and millions of people who've been born and died never hearing of it? Why are there still millions and millions of people who never had the chance to be redeemed in the only available way? The Church says, extra ecclesia nulla salus. Am I not correct?
That's absolutely correct.
That you can't be saved without it. But therefore, what are we going to say to the people who never even had the chance? Now, this, I think, simply shows how crudely man-made religion is. Not just how man-made and manufactured it is, but how very crudely they suddenly had a thought that, if it was allowed to occur properly, would demolish the whole premise.
Professor White, you have a minute to the break.
Let me answer the first part of that, and may I answer the second when we come back to the break? The first part is this. Thank heavens I don't have to defend those who are ignorant of the teachings of their own church. Now, admittedly, this suggests flaws in the hierarchy, flaws in the way in which doctrine has been taught, and certainly misconceptions that have been forced on a number of young people. In any educational system, I hope you would agree with me, very often there is bad teaching. I've been a teacher for 37 years. I know it happens. It certainly happens in the church. That doesn't, however, change the actual doctrines and dogmas that the church does hold, and I will answer the second part of that after the break, if I may.
Yes, and we'll come back and find out what it is actually that the church teaches about those who do not accept its teachings when we return. Don't go anywhere, America. Christopher Hitchens, Vanity Fair columnist, author, most recently of God is Not Great, and David Allen White, author of, most recently, Horn of the Unicorn. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show. 44 minutes after the hour, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thanks for listening to this special 2 hours of The Hugh Hewitt Show. Taped on August the 8th between David Allen White, professor at the United States Naval Academy, Christopher Hitchens, Vanity Fair columnist, author of God is Not Great. When we went to break, we'd gotten around to this issue, which is very central to God is Not Great, that Christianity is a rather crudely made, man-made religion because no one would think up a religion so awful in its consequences for so many people bereft of even the opportunity to embrace it. David Allen White, you were going to speak to that.
Let me just say, and I will submit to a higher authority here. Being a traditional Catholic, my impulse is to submit to a higher authority. Being a teacher of literature, let me submit to Dante. There is a magnificent scene in Canto 19 of the Paradiso. And by the way, I would disagree with you that no really tempting vision of heaven's ever been created. I'd point to Dante's Paradiso, which T.S. Eliot called the greatest poetry that can be written. But in any case, he is in the sphere of justice, the sphere of Jupiter, and that is the precise question he asks. A man is born along the shoreline of the Indus River. None is there to speak or teach or write of Christ. He, as far as human reason sees, in all he seeks and all he does is good. There is no sin within his life or speech. That man dies unbaptized without faith. Where is this justice, then, that would condemn him? This is Dante, the Catholic, asking that question when he's in heaven. The response of the Eagle of Justice is very interesting in that the first response is, take care of your own business first before you start worrying about others who are on the banks of the Indus River. But then the answer comes in a very strange scene in Canto 20. Dante is about to shoot up to the sphere of Saturn, and before he goes, he sees souls in paradise, including Trajan and the Trojan Ripheus, neither of whom could have been baptized. And he shouts aloud, can such things be? These men have made it into heaven. It was indeed Pope Benedict XV who said, Dante is the greatest Catholic artist, and his theology is sound, meaning the Church admits. There may well be souls in heaven that we will be surprised to see there, may not understand how they got there. They may not have gone through the usual process we think of. It's God's domain, not ours. We should tend to our own knitting.
What do you make of that, Christopher Hitchens?
Well, again, I think it's a perfectly defensible, well, it's not defensible, but a perfectly reasonably expressed viewpoint. It just isn't what the Church has been preaching. I mean, just to take a very recent example, I mean, Pope Benedict, the current Pope, is the very one who's recently reaffirmed that the Catholic Church is the one true and only Church. On his visit to Brazil, was forced to make some apologetic remarks about the Church's history of forcible conversion. I mean, in point of fact, these things were not done by aberrant teachers or overzealous missionaries. They were done institutionally by the Church. Now, I forget, you'll probably know, Professor, if it's in the Athanasian or the Nicene Creed, it may be in both, but one is required to say that after being crucified, dead, and buried, Jesus descended into hell. And my understanding of that was that he went down to rescue those who'd been boiling there for eternity before his opportunity for redemption became available. Now, that simply, to me, smacks of squaring the circle.